I'm ready for your questions.
That's good. All right. Hello, my name is Major Gregory H Adamian. I am honorably discharged from the United States Air Force, and I am also a Public Information Officer for Post 41, Corporal Paul S. Masubian Post of AMVETS in Watertown, Massachusetts. And we are now conducting an oral history of all of the members of our post, all 170 members of our post. And this is a project that has started this year, and the present date is May 20, 2002. We're privileged to have with us today one of the comrades of our post, Dr. Gregory Adamian, who has recently joined our post, but is an old veteran of the military service. And today we're going to interview him and get some of his reflections with regard to his service. Greg, tell us, were you drafted or did you enlist? That's what they want to ask you first.
I enlisted the week after I turned 17 years old.
Really?
Which was, I was born in 1926, so in 1943, September, October, I joined the United States Navy, specifically the V5 program, which was intended to train officers for the Navy Air Force.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was right after the first of the year that I was sent to Wesleyan University to study. And then from there, 8 months later, to Baldwin Wallace College in Ohio for some pre-flight training. And then, all of a sudden, the United States Navy determined that they didn't need any more pilots.
Uh-huh.
And so they asked the group of us, there were about 200 in Ohio, whether we wanted to go to Tarmac School down in Virginia.
What is Tarmac School?
It's a part of the United States Navy where you become someone who is involved with airplanes but doesn't fly them.
Like a support role?
Support role.
Okay.
And if not, to continue by shifting from a V5 program to a V12 program, which was a program to train officers for the United States Navy. So I opted to go into the V12 program, and then, lo and behold, got a set of orders transferring me to Harvard University.
Really?
Which was an amazing stroke of luck, because the whole group were separated and went to 15, 20 different colleges across the country. And I was living at the time in Watertown, Massachusetts, and here I'm given a set of orders to go to Harvard, which I did.
Okay.
Spent a couple of semesters there.
What program were you in?
In the V12 program, to be an officer, a line officer.
Okay. And is this in connection with teaching, your teaching requirements to teach officers how to?
No, this was in training. My principal courses were in navigation and gunnery and naval military tactics. And I graduated from Harvard with a Bachelor of Science in military tactics.
Isn't that amazing?
And at that point, the war was over.
This was when?
This is 1944 or 45.
Uh-huh.
And now we were given the choice of being discharged or serving on active duty. I selected the active duty.
You did?
Yeah, because I've been going to school since the day I joined the Navy, and I really wanted to serve. And so at that famous graduation at Harvard, when General Marshall announced the Marshall Plan.
Yes.
I was in that class that heard him give his Marshall Plan. And then a few weeks later, I received a set of orders to go to San Francisco, catch a troop transport to the Far East, and in particular to Shanghai, China, and to catch a tanker, the AO-57, which was a naval tanker, to serve as the navigation officer. I got to Shanghai, and sure enough, the tanker was just leaving port. They radioed the ship, had the ship slow down, and a motorboat took me out to the tanker, and I then served on that tanker for, I would say, about 8 months. And we went from Shanghai to Bahrain to pick up oil. That's in the Gulf area near Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah.
Bahrain is a small country with a large amount of oil.
So sometimes called Bahrain.
Bahrain,
right.
and so we picked up oil, filled the tanker with oil.
This is crude oil.
Crude oil, and then went to Shanghai, or to Hong Kong, or to the Philippines, and stayed there for like a week or so while Navy ships came alongside, and we refueled them. As soon as the oil was gone, we packed our stuff and headed for Bahrain again. I think I made 3 trips to Bahrain, which was not a place of great interest because it was very, very hot there, no matter when. And when we got there, it was like 105 degrees, and you could fry eggs on the deck of the ship. Then I got back to Hong Kong, and I had a set of orders to change my tour of duty from the tanker, which, by the way, was very interesting. And I learned a lot about navigation, became the navigation officer. In fact,
Were you the only navigation officer?
Yes, there was one other one, but I took charge of it, and because I had studied it at college, and got a lot of experience, and then all of a sudden, I was transferred to
Tell me what an LCI is.
An LCI is a landing craft infantry.
Okay.
Which was the kind of a boat you use when you're invading someplace. And that landing LCI was tied up in the harbor in Hong Kong. And I was assigned to that ship, which is very small compared to the tanker. The tanker is like 2 or 3 football fields. And if you've seen a tanker, their configuration is such that the forward part and the aft part are high, and the center part is low.
Yes.
And so the water
washes right
over it. But that's where the turnoffs are for the oil and what have you. Now that ship was 300 yards, 100 yards long. And this LCI was maybe 150 feet. I mean, really small. And it had a crew of 20 and 3 officers. And I was named the executive officer of the ship.
Okay. And how many troops did it take?
I don't know. Probably because it would be next to a ship that was larger, and they would load the LCI with troops, and then it would go ashore. But
would the LCI actually touch the shore when it landed?
Yes, it was a flat bottom.
Or would it offload, for instance, on these
No,
Higgins
it
craft?
would offload about 10, 15, 20 yards from the the beach.
All right.
I never went through that process because it was tied up at the dock. I later found out that they had some engine problems,
Okay.
and so it never really went to sea. I was just as happy because they ride very poorly
Yeah.
because they're flat bottoms.
I
The
understand.
tanker, on the other hand, was a beautiful riding ship because it had a draft of about 40 feet. And when you're loaded with crude oil, that ship is 3/4 underwater, so nothing phases it, and it's very, very stable.
What keeps it afloat?
Well, it's a
Must have
naval
something
ship.
to keep it afloat.
You know, it's a ship that's designed to float, and its top speed is maybe 12, 13 knots, and you travel, 24 hours a day. There were, I think, 12 officers on the tanker, and about 100 men.
Now,
On the tanker.
when you were going to Bahrain and back from Bahrain to Shanghai, about what year was this?
I'd say it was 1945 and 46.
The hostilities were still in force.
Now, the hostilities were really over in, I think, 45.
August of 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
when
it was the
atom
end
bomb-
of 45 and 46.
Okay.
And most of the time on the tanker, those who were on watch always carried rifles, and there were seamen on board the ship armed with rifles, because there were lots of mines.
Ah, yes.
And so we spent a lot of time shooting mines and blowing them up, even though we were heading toward the Arabian Sea.
So you had no actual fear of, for instance, things like submarines?
No fear of that. The only thing we were fearful of was getting blown up by
a
a
mine.
mine. And where we carried oil,
Yes.
it would be a disaster if we hit a mine.
Did you carry fuel besides oil?
Yes, no,
Gasoline?
that was it.
Just oil?
Oil, crude oil, that was used to run the ships.
I see. How about the possibility of being attacked by a non-hostile? Well, when you say non-hostile, how about somebody wanting to, for instance, take over your ship? You had no problem
No, there was
like that.
there were pirates in those waters for a long time, but they never bothered with United States Navy ships.
Did
because we
you have
were
an
armed.
escort at all?
No, we didn't have an escort. We had some guns on board, but no escort.
No escort.
No escort.
Okay. So actually what you were doing was getting the oil from Bahrain and feeding the ships of the United States Navy.
Right.
You didn't have any actual role in
In
having
the
the oil
conflict.
for civilian
No,
purposes in
no.
China.
This oil, I presume it was refined in its, for use on board a ship for fuel, because a destroyer, for example, came alongside, and we pumped, a fifth of our supply onto that destroyer, and that's what they used
to run
as
the
fuel
ship.
to run the ship.
So they must have had some kind of refining
So
capabilities on this ship.
the oil was refined in Bahrain.
Okay.
So when we received the oil, it was ready for use on board ship.
Okay. And where did you go after that? After you got through with
Then
Paul in that Gulf area?
after that, that's when I went to had the duty to LCI, and stayed in Hong Kong, tied up at a dock for maybe 3 to 4 months. And it was exceptionally boring because there was nothing to do. At times, the captain under whom I served, and I had a jeep, and I would take 1 or 2 sailors into the middle of Hong Kong to act as shore patrol. I did that also and had a lot of shore patrol duty. Whenever the tanker tied up to refuel ships that came alongside, we were in port for like a couple of weeks to discharge all of the oil. And certain officers were given duties ashore. I was a shore patrol officer on many occasions, and went ashore at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon with two armed sailors and a driver, and we went downtown in Hong Kong, visited all the bars, and to be sure that sailors or soldiers were not causing any disruption. And
tell us about your own personal experiences in Hong Kong.
well, it was exceptionally interesting for me as someone of Armenian extraction. In fact, on one shore patrol duty, we went into this bar, and there was a woman who owned it, and we walked up to her and asked her how things were, and she says, fine. She says, you don't look American, because of my perpetual tan. What nationality are you? I said, I'm a United States citizen. I was born in Massachusetts. I said, I mean, what's your ethnicity?
Yes.
I said, I'm Armenian. She said, oh my goodness, you have to go up the street because there's a bar there, a very, very large one, called the Blue Bar. And there's a restaurant across the street from it called Kafkas Restaurant.
Kafkas.
Both those establishments are owned by Armenians.
Really?
And I'm sure they'd love to see you. So we got in the Jeep, drove up there. She said, oh, before I left, she said, you can always tell at the Blue Bar who the owner is, because he sits at the end of the bar with the cash register.
Okay.
So we went there. I walked to the end of the bar. I noticed this man. I started speaking to him in Armenian. He almost fell off the chair to see someone in a naval uniform, an officer in the United States Navy, speaking Armenian to him.
Yeah.
We became great friends.
Uh-huh.
So he said, whenever you have shore duty, shore leave, you come and see me. Because I'd like to take you around to the city and introduce you to the other Armenians within the city, and there were a lot of them.
Really?
And then he took me across the street, introduced me to the owner of the Kafkas restaurant, who had just been visited by another Navy person, John Mugar.
Oh, really?
John Mugar was in the Navy and went to Hong Kong and was introduced to this person. So he said, please, do you know John? I said, John, I know John very well. He said, give him my regards when you see him. And,
Amazing.
And then when I got my orders to leave Hong Kong, the Armenian community, there was another Armenian family there. They owned all the French restaurants.
Really?
In Hong Kong.
Wonderful.
And they had a big party for me. 200 people. 200 Armenians
What was
at
this
this
fellow's
restaurant.
name? Does his name come to mind?
You know, I have it at home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Did he tell you how he got to China?
Yeah, he came from Russia.
Uh-huh.
And there were a lot of Russian Armenians in Shanghai and in Hong Kong.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the situation now? Do you know?
I don't know. I visited there about 10, 15 years ago and never saw anyone.
Never saw any trace of the Kafkas?
No.
Yeah.
I heard later, in fact, John Mugar told me that the owner of the Kafkas moved to California.
Oh, really?
And opened a restaurant in Hollywood called the Kafkas Restaurant.
Really?
Yeah. I never went there to check on it.
Okay.
But I thought that was very interesting.
Well, Did you escape from your duty from this LCI that never floated? Did you
Yeah.
finally get away from that?
Yeah, I just went ashore and looked around, went on some trips.
No, I'm
yeah.
talking about, did your tour of duty end with that?
My tour of duty ended when my tour ended at the LCI. I received my orders that I was going to be discharged to report to a place in California called the Alameda Naval Base,
Oh, yes.
and a ship, a troop transport, took me to California, and I went through the process and was discharged honorably from the United States Navy. Then I returned to the Boston area in
At what
Watertown.
rank? At what rank were you discharged?
I was a lieutenant junior grade.
Okay.
I went out as an ensign and ended up a lieutenant junior grade. And had I stayed in, within the next 6 months, I was going to become a lieutenant commander.
So you were discharged from Alameda and came back to the Boston area?
Came back to the Boston area, returned to Harvard University because I wanted to change my degree from a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Naval Tactics to some degree that might be more useful in the employment field.
Yes, right.
So I returned to Harvard, went one semester, took 4 courses, changed my degree to a Bachelor of Science, in political economy, and sort of graduated again, and then decided to go to law school.
Okay.
I was admitted to Boston University Law School, graduated in 3 years, which is the length of time for a law degree.
Is that under the auspices of the GI Bill?
Under the auspices of the GI Bill.
But you went to Harvard for 2 years.
I went to Harvard, and in a
With the GI
case
Bill?
in a case that I brought against the Veterans Administration while I was going to Harvard after my return from active duty, on an appeal, got them to approve the service at Harvard and Wesleyan and Baldwin Wallace as time spent on duty rather than in education, because the degree that I got had nothing to do with what I was interested in.
That's right.
And consequently, I went 3 years to law school, and then I went to 1 semester to Harvard to change my degree, 3 years to Harvard Law School, and then 2 years to Harvard Graduate School of Public Administration, all on the GI Bill.
How did you feel about the GI Bill, and how do you feel about it today?
I think it was the greatest thing that ever happened to this country,
Why?
because it gave lots of individuals an opportunity to go to college who might not have otherwise benefited from that. And I know, for example, that I probably, number one, would not have been able to go to Harvard, but number two, probably would not have gone to college because my father couldn't afford to send me. And as a consequence, I had 7 years of college paid for by the GI Bill or the United States Navy.
Yes. So, can you give us any idea as to what the educational level of the service was that you experienced? In other words, were the people in the service that you experienced, were they of a low, medium, or high educational level with regard to?
Well, to be admitted to the V5 program, you had to take examinations to be admitted. So you just couldn't go sign up in the United States V5 program, which means that you had to pass these exams, which were based upon entrance to any good college. I had a lot of classmates who were very wealthy. I had a lot of classmates who were like myself. One of my classmates was Bob Kennedy,
Really?
Senator Bob Kennedy. He lived in the same house I did, at Elliott House. Jack Lemmon, the famous actor, who just passed away last year,
Yeah.
was a member of my class. And a number of other college presidents were members of my class.
Wonderful.
So,
So you feel that the GI Bill, you think it should be continued to people who are presently in the service?
absolutely.
Really?
I think it was the most wonderful thing that ever happened. I once put together some information, but it was too difficult to get it, to trace what happened to those who were able to take advantage of the GI Bill and what they contributed to the United States, having had this education given to them. I'll bet if you made a tally, you would find that the United States received more in taxes from those people whom they educated than what they spent.
Now, being president and chancellor of Bentley College and being in the educational field, do you feel that the GI Bill and the raised educational level and the increased amount of professionals it produced also helped contribute to the growth of colleges, law schools all over the country?
It was probably the greatest boom to colleges and universities in the country ever.
They received more money because their graduates were richer, and they did have an appreciation for the education that they received.
Right, and they enrolled thousands and thousands more students than they would have ever enrolled.
So we became more of a classless society, but classless even though we were all more educated
Definitely.
than non-educated. It just raised the general
The country educated.
Yeah.
I don't know how many million veterans there were. Is there a number like 10 or 11 million
Oh boy, I
veterans?
don't know.
And how many took advantage of the GI Bill?
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was Senator Brooke was a recipient of the GI Bill.
Yes, I think so.
And it was just a wonderful opportunity for so many.
And it also opened your eyes to the world. Being outside of the continental U.S., you were...
It was the greatest experience that I ever had.
Okay. And let me see here. What did you have any feeling with regard to the fact that your parents came from overseas and that they appreciated the benefits of the United States and opportunities and freedom that they had here? Did you have any feeling that you were, by serving in the United States, somehow paying back the United States for the benefits they received?
I think that's really a very good question. I think so. I mean, why would I, at age 17, I know people that were evading the draft, and didn't want to serve. And I couldn't wait. At the time, I was working at the Hood Rubber Company because I graduated in Watertown because I graduated from high school in Brooklyn, New York, and then we moved back to Boston. And I graduated when I was 16, and so I worked at the Hood Rubber Company for a year. I couldn't wait until I turned 17 so that I could join the armed forces. And it was ironical in a way that I joined the United States Navy Air Corps. Number one, I don't like the water, and number two, I'm fearful of heights.
That's right.
Anyway.
Now, you mentioned Harvard. I don't think Harvard allows ROTC programs.
No, they discontinued it.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's shameful, and I think the new president is going to change that.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, MIT has ROTC.
Yes, of course.
And there are people at Harvard who go to MIT for their ROTC training now.
Really? Wonderful.
So if there are students at Harvard who want to join an ROTC program, they go to MIT. I tried to start a ROTC program at Bentley when I became president. didn't succeed because there were too many other colleges that had it, but made an arrangement with the University of Lowell that had an ROTC program, and so students at Bentley were able to take their military training at the University of Lowell and get the benefit of the credits and the compensation that you receive as long as you agreed to serve, I think it was 2 years after graduation in the armed services.
All right. Now, tell me, how did your family feel about you going into the service? Did you communicate with them regularly?
You know, I think they were. My mother was a little concerned, but my father thought it was a good thing to do, and I think I convinced them because I had passed the exam for the V5 program, and therefore I was going to get some education before I started flying a plane.
My father always told me that he had not received education, but he appreciated education.
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah, my father was self-educated. I think he came to this country when he was 16, 17 years old, but could read and write English and Armenian and Armenian.
Yeah. So
and could speak Turkish.
Appreciate.
So as an Eintopsi, most of the Eintopsis spoke Turkish because
Yes.
Turks had overrun that part of Armenia.
How did you fare with your friends in the service? Were there any prejudices, rivalries, antipathies, friendships?
No, I never experienced any antipathy or prejudice or discrimination because I was Armenian. In fact, when I went aboard the tanker, the first thing I had to do was to report to the captain, who was a four-striper and a graduate of Annapolis. And I walked in and reported for duty to him. He says, "I noticed by your name, you must be Armenian." I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He said, "One of my closest friends in Maryland was Armenian. A hard-working man. I'm going to put you in charge of the other 4 officers that are also new recruits on this ship,
Wonderful.
so that you can help train them."
So our reputation precedes us.
So our reputation preceded us. I think, generally speaking, we've got a great reputation.
Now, tell us something about your post-service career with regard to your affiliation with veterans. You recently joined Post 41, and have you had things to do with veterans prior to that?
I really haven't. You know, it's something as a as a lawyer and as an educator, I've been running a rat race for 18, 19 hours a day for many, many years. And it's only recently that I had a little time to spend for some social events and to meet with my fellow veterans.
How do you feel with your experiences here at the Post?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to meet friends. I know so many of them that I've met during my life, and it's just nice to reacquaint yourself with everyone.
Yes,
and it was surprising in a way that I learned that most of them had been in the service.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good.
We have a very, very rich history of people who have been with the Masubian Post, not only the Battle of the Bulge, but the attack upon the Rhine, the Omaha Beach invasion, and many, many, many others. I've been impressed with the quality of the veterans that we have here at the Post. I'm going to proceed to close this interview by thanking our newly acquired veteran, Greg Adamian, for this interview. I want to thank you very much, Greg. And
Thank you,
we
Greg.
appreciate all the experiences. And if there's any Is there anything that you'd like to add to this for posterity? This being May 20 in the year 2002, our oral history will probably not be completed until I learn how to edit and do all of this film in the year 2007. So all of this will be made available to the public, and we've had your permission to record this interview, and we also have your permission, I take it, to distribute the information that we've had in the interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate it
Great.
very much.
Pleasure. That was a
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right. All right, now you're going to stop it. Hello, my name is Major Gregory H Adamian. I'm the director of the Oral History Project for Post-41 AMVETS in Watertown, Massachusetts. The date is June 17.